yeah, and then spending many, many, many months in the Himalayas by myself, pretty much, that really gave me this that drive, and I think that's what maybe that was part of it. I my fascination for Everest, and I was a religious studies major at UC Berkeley, and kind of those two interests or passions collided together on that mountaintop in Ladakh, India, and thus the Everest Peace Project was born.
I went to Berkeley too. What a wonderful school.
It's,
I'm a student of Thich Nhat Hanh and have been for some years now, who's an engaged Buddhist. And Martin Luther King felt that he should get the Nobel Prize. They haven't given it to him yet, but quite an incredible being. And I was wondering how your Buddhist perspective influenced this expedition.
you know, I'm not. I don't know. I'm not quite sure. I, I, I tell people I'm a Buddhist, but I'm not a very good one. I mean, in that I, I, uh, I try to be mindful. I try to be compassionate. I try to be understanding and loving, and all those things that make one a Buddhist. And certainly meditation's important. Um, and with all those things, maybe that makes me a more centered person in that I try to be I try to see the intention behind my actions, and maybe thus I'm a little more conscious of what I'm doing than the average person. I don't know. It helps me to be more conscientious as a person. I think because I can't get away with ignorance. I can't. They say ignorance is bliss. If you're ignorant, you just don't know any better. And if you try to be actively conscious about what you're doing, it makes it a little bit more difficult to get away with certain things. And so, in some ways, maybe it's made life a little more difficult. But in other ways, I think if you try to be a good person and you try to, make the world a little bit better place, that hopefully things will, come back to you. The whole karma thing, and what comes around goes around. And so, uh, yeah, I don't know if what I said answered your question, but
That's okay. I have a couple of questions about On the Mountain. Actually, On the Mountain. I thought it was fascinating in the film about how you have to continue to acclimate your bodies. And if you don't, you're not going to make it up the mountain. But I really want to know how far you had to go to continually acclimate. If you could describe that and what you ate and drank going up the mountain.
well, you know, you got to acclimate or you die. Basically, the body is not made to live at those high elevations, and so it's just a process of going to a certain point, going back down to a lower point, going back up to a higher point, going back down to a medium point, going back up to a higher point. It's just kind of up and down, up and down, up and down, till you finally acclimate.
Is there a science to acclimation? Were the Sherpas guiding and pacing that, or was there already a
Yeah,
science you were all
I
following?
was the expedition leader in that I was putting this whole thing together. But the climbing leader was that name I mentioned earlier, McGinnis, the guy who I met several years before in that cafe in Kathmandu. He was our climbing leader. He had summited Everest several times and been on many, many, many large expeditions. And then, of course, we had some wonderful Sherpas who had summited Everest multiple times. And usually they say you don't want to climb more than 3,000 feet higher on any given day once you get above about 9,000 feet. So, except for, maybe summit day. So it's a process of just going a little bit and going back down, going up and down. And that's why you're on the mountain for anywhere from 40 to 60 days.
Wow.
It's not an easy thing being on Everest.
How did you make sure that you didn't lose muscle mass during this? That's why I'm asking you about what you ate and drank and how that was taken care of. I think people would be interested in that.
Well, Everest is not something you want to bring your significant other on for your honeymoon. It's
It looks grueling, freezing, unbelievably uncomfortable.
I actually lost 35 pounds, cracked my tailbone, and had pneumonia. So it was definitely a bit of suffering there. Um, yeah, it's a great diet place. In other words, you can eat as much as you want, and you're still going to lose weight because your body's working so hard to function. I mean, just at our advanced base camp is 21,000 feet, and we spent a couple of weeks there. And just going to the bathroom, you're out of breath. I mean, it's hard work up there. The Sherpas, for their part, were just phenomenal. They had a cooking tent, and they'd bring us spaghetti and and all sorts of interesting concoctions and tomato or potatoes and little pseudo French fries and pancakes and things like that. But it's interesting what tasted good at lower elevation, even at base camp, which was 17,000 feet, up at 21,000 feet, just nothing tastes good. And so it's really hard to want to eat a lot. And so everybody loses weight. You definitely, high altitude sucks energy out of you. So it's hard all the way around.
How did you make sure that you didn't go through such fatigue that you couldn't function? See, there's some relationship between on your way up, what you're eating and supplementing with, and your water intake I want to hear about. What did you do about water intake and staying hydrated?
Well, what a lot of people don't realize is that when you climb a big mountain, for the most part, you're just hanging out and waiting, acclimating or waiting for the weather to break for the next step. And so, once again, the Sherpas, God love them, they, from the glaciers, they take out big chunks of ice. And in this big tent, cooking tent, they have big pots, and they boil water, basically, and that purifies it. And thus we have drinking water. And then up high on the mountain, these are at the base camps, at base camp and advanced base camp, the two big camps. Higher up at what's called the North Call, Camp 2, Camp 3, that's when you have smaller tents and you have little cooking stoves, and that's where you get snow and you boil snow yourself.
I'll bet that water was great.
Yeah. You get a lot of floaties in the water, lots of these weird things that are floating around. And
Really?
yeah, it's pretty gross.
Wow. I would think it would be like this pure, pristine.
No, yeah. A lot of that from ice has been there for God knows how long, years, or because sometimes there's not a big amount of snowfall and you're hacking away at ice, and that ice could be there for could have been sitting there for a long time.
Wow. What is the bathroom situation up on Everest? Seriously, I mean, I know you probably don't want to talk about it, but I think people would say, well, what do you do?
Well, at base camp and advanced base camp, I actually got this company. I think they were, memory holds, Phillips Environmental. They had these wonderful environmental porta potties, basically, and these tents, lightweight tents that were kind of what's called bomber proof, which basically means very sturdy, and sit down little plastic potty things. And they had these individual bags that you could go to the bathroom in a sanitary way, and then fold them up and throw them away and make this pile. And we would take them down off the mountain to go pee. Basically, it's just wherever you want to go. And that's why you have to be careful of what snow you drink, obviously. But again, at base camp and advanced base camp, we had